Hello, my name's David Runciman, and this is Past, Present, Future. Today we have reached the final film in our series about the great political films. It's a series that started with a film that came out in 1937, and we're finishing with one that came out just a year ago. It's a film that touches on many of the themes I've talked about already in this series: extreme violence, guilt and responsibility, abuses of power. But it's also nothing like any of the other films. It's nothing like anything else I think I've ever seen. It is Jonathan Glazer's remarkable film about Auschwitz, The Zone of Interest. I began the last episode, the one on Zero Dark 30, by talking about a German philosopher, Carl Schmitt, who became a Nazi, and talking about his view of politics, which is that politics really means extreme choices about violence and about friends and enemies, who lives and who dies. And I made the point that though Schmitt wanted to keep that completely separate from what he thought of as routine or office politics, the two things bleed into each other. You can't separate out the extremes and the bureaucratization of all decision-making. And that's kind of what I felt Zero Dark 30 was in part about. And it might seem like the film I'm talking about today, The Zone of Interest, is another version of that, an even more extreme version of that, because it is a film about actual Nazis. Indeed, it's a film about the man who ran Auschwitz. But it's also about how Auschwitz itself and this man's life and the life of his family was banal, was ordinary. We see conventional scenes of domestic life, and we see them coexisting with the most monstrous thing that politics can be. And so it might be thought that this is a film about the tension between trying to live an ordinary life and living a life which is not just not ordinary, but almost beyond comprehension in its horror, in its evil. I don't think it is that film. I don't think it is a film about how these things live in tension with each other and how human beings divide themselves up or bifurcate their inner life so that they can simultaneously be ordinary, bureaucratic, jobsworths and monsters. The people in this film just are monsters. And the reason that they are monsters is that they don't live in tension. They don't live a divided life. They live a whole life. Their life isn't one that makes them feel they're constantly having to insulate themselves from or protect themselves from the truth about what they do. These people, not just the man who runs Auschwitz, but his family, they know what he does. They know what they do. And that means, in a way, this isn't a film about inner tension. It's a completely different kind of movie. The word I would use to describe the way it portrays this life is it's surreal, it's monstrous, it's dreamlike, it's nightmarish. It's nothing like Zero Dark 30. Let me give an example. There is a scene in this film which could be said to parallel one of the scenes I talked about in the last episode in Zero Dark 30, because it's set in an office, a kind of conventional conference room, the kind that anyone who has ever worked in any big organization will be familiar with. This one is a bit old-fashioned because we're in 1944, but still, people have sat in rooms like this. And as in Zero Dark 30, it's an office in which a group of people are sitting around having a pretty conventional-looking meeting. They're going through the motions that would be familiar to anyone who's sat in such a meeting. And yet what they are talking about is not conventional at all. In Zero Dark 30, they're talking about killing. The man running the meeting, who's shouting at his underlings, says, "Bring me people to kill. You're not doing your jobs. You're failing on your KPIs." And this meeting in the Zone of Interest has a similar kind of vibe to it, though no one in it actually is angry. Everyone is rather complacently content with how things are going. But it is a very, very conventional meeting, actually more conventional than the other meetings. So we see them going through the agenda in this meeting. There are maybe 30 people sitting around the table, so it's a slightly bigger meeting than the other one. And then there are quite a lot of underlings around the edge of the room. So it's a packed room, and it's clearly a very important meeting. And the people in the meeting feel pretty important, self-important, many of them. And it has that pomposity of bureaucratic life. There are apologies at the beginning. A couple of people who should be there aren't there. We're not really told why, and obviously it's a little disappointing that they haven't shown up. There's an agenda, quite an elaborate agenda. The person who is co-chairing the meeting says, gentlemen, we've got a lot to get through here. People always say that. So it goes on. There is a kind of employee of the month in this meeting. The one person is singled out early on to get one of those rounds of applause you get in rooms like that, where people sort of grunt and nod and bang the table. Well done. This guy is really killing it. We're told that the person in charge is often hearing great reports about what this guy is doing on the front line. So it's a super conventional meeting. The people around the table are the men who run the death camps. And they are referred to early on by the name of the camp, not their own name. So when they're doing the seating plan, Auschwitz sits here, Birkenau sits here, Belsen sits here. The people who are missing, again, are described by their names. A couple of the camps are missing. And they are talking about, the reason the meeting has been called and is important, is the stepping up of the final solution, particularly the Hungarian program. This is spring 1944. And they are about to move to the extermination of the Jews of Hungary. And we are talking hundreds of thousands of people, up to 1 million, are going to have to be killed. And the reason the meeting is important and people really need to pay attention, they've got to get through the agenda, is there's a lot that has to be done if you're going to take on a task like that. It's complicated. There's a lot of technical things that have to be addressed. A lot of bureaucratic issues have to be addressed. There are potentially going to be all sorts of kinks in the pipeline. They do use that kind of language. So in that sense, it is office politics. But to watch this scene is not, as in the case of the similar scene in Zero Dark 30, to feel a kind of tension, a doubleness to what's going on, in which these are people who are simultaneously doing something ordinary and doing something extraordinary, using a language that is familiar to talk about something that is monstrous or unfamiliar. There is no tension in the room, in the zone of interest. Everyone is comfortable with what they are doing. Everyone has internalized what it is they are doing. And to watch it from the outside is to watch a scene that is nothing like anything that any of us have ever been in. It's not like any meeting you can imagine. What it's like is a bad dream. In dreams where you are doing something familiar, and yet it makes no sense at all. It's not what we experience in everyday life when we are being pulled in different directions. It's like being in a netherworld, an underworld, a world where everything is upside down and can't be grasped. And that sense is reinforced in this film by the opening shot of the meeting, which is, unlike most of it, which is filmed conventionally, a shot from above with a kind of fisheye lens where it looks really weird, like something distorted, utterly unfamiliar, and dreamlike. The distortions of dreams where things just unravel before your eyes. That's what this is. This is not the stuff of the tension between extreme politics and office politics. This is the stuff of nightmares. And it is also an outlier in the film, the office scene, because it is taking place far away from the death camps, and they are talking about things that are not present in the room. They are only present as words or pieces of paper. But almost all of the zone of interest takes place in a death camp in Auschwitz. The film is probably best known as an Auschwitz movie that ostensibly doesn't take you inside the camp. There are no scenes that are filmed inside what we conventionally think of as Auschwitz. Everything, at least formally, is just outside, because most of the action happens in the house of the man, Rudolf Höss, who runs the camp, and his family. It's a very conventional kind of house. Quite a nice house. It has a lovely garden, and the wall of the garden is the wall of the camp. It has barbed wire at the top pointing inwards towards the camp. So there is a boundary which is immediate, but it is ostensibly outside. And then some of the other action takes place a little further away from the camp. The family go on picnics. There are river trips. There's a boat, a rowboat that they use to go up and down the river. There are a couple of horse riding expeditions, not far from the camp, but a little further away than the house is. And yet it is not true that this film is set outside of Auschwitz. This is all inside. And the reason that it's inside is that the people who are living in this house, the family of the man who runs the camp, they are living and breathing the camp itself. And the way I would put this is to say, to my mind anyway, this is emphatically not a film about the banality of evil. It might look like it's a film about the banality of evil, that evil coexists with ordinary domestic life and picnics and birthday parties and worries about children's education and family bickering and family visits, all the stuff that we see happening in the house of Rudolf Höss, the man who runs Auschwitz. This is not a film about the banality of evil. That phrase, which was coined by Hannah Arendt when she was reporting on the trial of Eichmann in Jerusalem, the trial that happened in 1961, she wrote it up in the New Yorker in 1963, and she made that phrase, the banality of evil, almost ubiquitous. It's become a kind of cliche. What I associate it with is language. The banality of evil is in part to describe the Holocaust and the horrors, and the ways in which that was made possible by a bureaucratic, euphemistic language that appears in documents, in the paper shuffling that went on as this terrible process was unfolding. And men like Eichmann, who were not much on the front line, but were doing this at one remove and behind something, language, that insulated them in some ways from what they were doing. Of course, they knew what they were doing. Of course, they were aware of it and understood it in all of its implications. And yet language was a kind of insulating barrier, the sort of bureaucratic language which is true of all bureaucracies, democratic, fascist, monstrous, genocidal. All bureaucratic language is a little euphemistic. It is useful to have language that doesn't quite say what it means or mean what it says, because it allows people to hide behind it, which is what bureaucrats do. And the banality of evil is the familiarity of a world in which this bureaucratic language, which could be used in other contexts, is being used as a sort of barrier or insulation in the way of seeing the thing full on for what it is, even though you know what it is. That's what makes it both evil and banal. But in the zone of interest, language is not the barrier, because language can't be the barrier, because unlike in that office meeting, they are not experiencing the thing, the zone of interest, the camp and its horrors, through the written word, through descriptions of it, through accounts of it, through the inability of any language, any words, to capture what's going on inside, behind the wall. They are breathing it in. The wall is no barrier. Language is a barrier, but a wall, I don't know how high it is, maybe it's 12 feet high, as shown in this film, with barbed wire on the top. That is no barrier at all. It is not a film where the wall between the garden where the family live and the horrors that lie on the other side is some kind of dividing line. It is all continuous. It is an extension. The wall is an extension of the camp into the garden, because almost everything passes over the wall, not people, but sensory experience. This is not about language. This is about smell and taste, and particularly in this film, sound. The people who live on the other side of the wall, the so-called ordinary family, they breathe this air. And this film brilliantly conveys the fact that this is the air they breathe. They can't ignore it. There is almost no discussion in this film of smell. And yet the way the actors portray these characters, they somehow manage to give you a strong sense that they are breathing an air that is not right. And they know it's not right. But it is also their air. It is the air that they breathe. The dirt, the soot, the ash. This is the soot and the ash of death. And it hangs in the air, and it gets on their clothes sometimes. And sometimes when they have to clean and scrub, they know that's what they're scrubbing off. They are not living in ignorance. They are not living in deliberate isolation. They can't. But above all, it's sound. This film is famous, celebrated for the sound work that went into it. And it is extraordinary. Throughout the film, we see scenes of conventional domestic life which cannot be treated as ordinary or banal or anything other than nightmarish, because they all take place against a backdrop of noise which is horrifying. And yet the noise that is horrifying is not that different from the noise of domestic life. So, for instance, in the home, the family keep dogs and the dogs bark. And at the same time, there is a constant backdrop of barking coming from the other side of the wall, the other dogs, the dogs that are being used to herd and hound the people getting off the trains into the gas chambers. And we hear barking from both sides of the wall, and it's continuous. No one can ignore it. The barking is there. Occasionally, but also continuously, there is gunfire. It's muffled, it's distant. There is shouting, angry, aggressive shouting coming from the other side of the wall. There are screams. And this is all background noise. None of it is foregrounded. None of it is ever foregrounded in this film. Like the air that they breathe, the smells that they smell, the stuff that they brush off their clothes or their skin. The noise is simply their life. It's not on the other side of anything. And the worst noise of all, which is the one that never stops. There is shooting, and then there are periods of time when the shooting stops. Dogs bark, but they don't bark every minute of every day. But the thing that rumbles on continuously is the sound of the furnaces burning the bodies, because by this point the camp has moved to a 24/7 operation. It's there in the daytime, it's there at nighttime. It's muffled, it's distant, it's very hard to describe, it's permanent. It sounds like a rumble rather than a roar. It's a sort of growling noise. It's the sound of something swallowing something. It sounds like the growling of the devil's stomach. It's something from nightmares. And for these people, it's there all the time. They can't say we insulate ourselves from it. They don't walk around with earplugs. They don't put their fingers in their ears. They talk over it. They know it's there. And it's their world. To live like that and to watch people living like that has nothing banal about it, because even the most banal events, feeding the children, bickering about going on holiday, doing the washing up, if it takes place with this noise in the background, the devil's growl, it requires a kind of act of will to keep doing it as though it were ordinary. No one in this film can pretend that they have found a way to separate out the different parts of their lives. It's willful. These people are not ignorant, not even, I think, the children. We don't get to see much of what the children are really doing. They are only seen in pretty banal scenes. And yet, the way the children are portrayed in this film makes me feel like there is no attempt to suggest that anyone who lives 50 yards from a camp that is killing people by the tens of the thousands every day is living in tension or isolation or ignorance, insulation. They are just living it. And it's not just an act of will. In the case of the central character in the film, I think, who is not Rudolf Höss, but his wife, Hedwig Höss, played by the peerless Sandra Hüller. Sandra Hüller, the star of Tony Erdmann, of Anatomy of a Fall, and of this film. In the case of Hedwig Höss, it is an act of choice. She has chosen this life. And by this life, we don't just mean a nice house, a nice garden, a vegetable patch, greenhouses. There's a little swimming pool that they built in the garden. And as she said, this was fields when we arrived, and we've created this all for ourselves. This is not just she has chosen that life. She has chosen that life here at Auschwitz, in Auschwitz. And this is made clear in what I think is the pivotal scene in the film, an extraordinary scene, unforgettable in its ordinariness, but there's nothing ordinary about it. It's also like something from a nightmare. At a certain point in the movie, it becomes clear to Rudolf Höss that he is being reassigned. So he's very proud of his work at Auschwitz, and they like living in this house. But the bureaucracy takes over, and it becomes clear that he is needed somewhere else. That is, they want him to become a kind of inspector of death camps to make sure that all of them are running at the right level of efficiency. They feel that that's the best way he can be used. And by they, I mean people running the Third Reich, Himmler and others. And so he's told that he's going to be reassigned to a kind of desk job in a way. And he's scared of telling his wife because he knows how much his wife loves it there. She loves the house. She loves the life. She thinks that their children are happy and healthy. And he's frightened of his wife. You can see, probably the only person he's frightened of the row that will follow. He wants her to be happy, happy wife, happy life, even in Auschwitz. But he has to tell her eventually because he's going to be reassigned. So he says to her, I'm afraid this is over now. We're being sent away. And she says no. Effectively, she says no. First of all, she's furious. And she says, fight. Tell them no. Take it to Himmler. Take it to Hitler. Why haven't you told Hitler? We don't want to leave. And he says, I have no choice. And then she follows him down to the river. And she says to him, you go, I'm going to stay. I'm not leaving this place. I choose this place. This is where I want to raise my children. This is where I want to raise our children. You have a job to do. My job is here in this house that we have built together. And she goes further than that. She says, this is our choice because not only did we build all this ourselves, but also this is the life that we are meant to be leading. Indeed, we are leading good Nazi lives. This is the life that Hitler wants us to lead. We are pioneers. We are pioneers of the East. We are settlers in the East. And she says, this, meaning the house, the garden, the space by the river, the space for the children to play in and to run around in. She says, this is our Lebensraum. She is not using that term euphemistically. This is not a sort of bureaucratic banality of evil, using that term in order to distance herself from the thing. She is embracing the thing. In English, it almost becomes a pun when it's translated. This is our living room or our living space, meaning this is our house, this is our domestic setting, this is where we want to live and breathe and furnish and educate our kids and have the birthday parties. This is our living room. But of course, Lebensraum also meant the settling of the East, the displacing of the people of the East, and ultimately the extermination of the people who could not be allowed to live in the East, including the Jews of Hungary. Lebensraum, there's nothing euphemistic about it. When she uses the language, it's not to create a barrier between herself and the thing. It is to choose the thing by using the word in almost a literal sense, by taking ownership of it. And she gets her way. He goes off to his desk job and she stays there with the kids. And she says the new commandant, the new man running the camp, he doesn't need this house anyway. He can settle in town. We want to live here. And here is touching the camp. We get to learn a little bit about who Hedwig Höss is and was through her mother, because her mother comes to visit the house. And we discover from her mother, none of this is explicit, but it's all there in how they behave with each other. We discover from their mother a little bit about their background, the background of the family. They are working class. Her mother was a cleaner. We discover this because her mother starts talking about one of the women that she used to clean for, a woman called Esther Silbermann. And she asks her daughter, I wonder if Esther Silbermann is on the other side of the wall. Esther Silbermann was a Jew. And she's curious and a little uneasy about the thought that Esther Silbermann, the woman she used to clean for, might be on the other side of that wall. But she also is still a bit grumbly about what happened with Esther Silbermann, because when Esther Silbermann was taken, there was a question about who got her belongings, and Hedwig Höss's mother bid for the Silbermann curtains and got outbid. And she's still a bit resentful, and she wants to talk to her daughter about that. So she was a cleaner. She cleaned for well-off Jewish families. And now here she is visiting her daughter. And there is in her daughter a real desire to show her mother that she has made something of herself. They come from a poor background, clearly. They are people who are used to being on the bottom of things. And now here she is. At one point, she herself happily refers to herself as the Queen of Auschwitz. But she really wants her mother to see not the regal life that she leads, but the incredibly comfortable life she leads. She's really made something of herself and for her family, which is the thing that people like them always wanted: a big house, a big garden, space, Lebensraum. She proudly shows her mother the room that she's going to sleep in, and it's been nicely decorated. It's pink. The mattresses are comfortable. And she wants her mother to be impressed. And her mother is impressed. Clearly, she's sort of overwhelmed by it. She can't believe how well her daughter has done for herself. But she's also uneasy. She's made uneasy by it throughout. And the way the mother's unease is portrayed is very subtle, but it's palpable as well. It's also ambiguous. Some of the unease is clearly she's not comfortable around her daughter because her daughter has done well for herself and is slightly lording it over her mother. She has made it clear now that she is the queen of Auschwitz and her mother needs to be impressed. And there is that mother-daughter tension in which the daughter, who is leading a better life than the mother could ever provide for her and is now saying, I'm providing for you. Here's this comfortable bed. Look at the food that we have. Look at the servants that we have. And disapprovingly, at one point, the mother says to her, you allow Jews in the house? And she says, of course we don't allow Jews in the house. These are local Polish girls. And there are no Jews in the house. There are some prisoners in the house. We see one prisoner bringing potatoes. He has a little red ribbon on the back of his jacket. He is a political prisoner. He is not wearing a yellow star. No Jews in the house. But servants, look at them. Lots of servants, gardeners. She says proudly, I did this garden myself. And then, as we would now say, a little humble brag, of course, actually, I needed the help of gardeners, i.e., I also have servants. The mother is uneasy at her daughter lording it over her, as any mother would be, perhaps. But she's also uneasy because she's not used to the air that she's breathing. Of all of the characters, she conveys, without saying anything or doing anything, that she is a little uncomfortable with the smell and the noise. At one point, she's sitting in a kind of deck chair in the garden with her daughter. There are kids, there are dogs. And then there's another loud bark from the other side of the wall. And everyone else is used to this. Dogs bark. They bark here, they bark there. But she just flinches. And then there's the noise. She's also not used to the noise. She doesn't say anything. She says nothing to her daughter, nothing to her son-in-law, Rudolf Höss. But she unravels while she is there. And she unravels at night. We also see her at nighttime, more or less breaking down. There is red in the night sky, the furnaces and the flames. There is the roar of the furnace, but it's not a roar, it's a muffled, devilish growl. She is meant to be, at one point, looking after the baby in the house, and the baby is crying. There is a screaming baby, and the family make a joke of the fact of what a pain it is to live with a baby that is so noisy. That's the noise they mind, not the shots and the screams and the growl of the furnace, but the crying baby. The mother of Hedwig Höss, the grandmother of the baby, has a breakdown around the screaming baby, but it's not the baby screaming that causes her to break and to leave. She just disappears. One morning, the breakfast table is laid, and Hedwig Höss wants to know where her mother is, and one of the servant girls says, she's gone. And Hedwig says, what do you mean she's gone? She's gone. And she finds a note. We are never shown the contents of the note. Hedwig Höss reads it and looks angry and a little humiliated. Her mother has kind of asserted herself back over her daughter by saying, you may be queen of Auschwitz, but I'm out of here. And she puts the note away in a drawer. And she's angry. The table for breakfast has been laid for her and her mother. And she says to one of the serving girls, take this food away. It's a sort of affront to me that you've laid for my mother when my mother is gone. And then, in her rage, she lashes out at the servant girl and says, did you put this here to humiliate me? And then she says, because this is not a woman who is in ignorance of any aspect of her life. She says to the servant girl, my husband could have your ashes spread over the fields. She is brilliantly portrayed by Sandra Hüller as a clumsy, ungainly woman. She doesn't have airs and graces. She doesn't laud it as Queen of Auschwitz by trying to be something that she's not. This is the person she wants to be. She's not trying to be posher than she is. She's clumsy. She's an awkward person, but she is now confident in her domain that she has built. And she knows what built it. Very early on, there is a scene in which clothes arrive and they are laid out. And the servant girls are told to take their pick of the silk underwear. We know where this has come from. They know where this has come from. And there's a very expensive looking fur jacket, which is Hedwig's. She takes that and she takes it upstairs. She tries it on, an incredibly elaborate, large fur jacket. And she puts it on and she checks whether it fits. It doesn't really fit, but to be honest, she doesn't care. She's like a child dressing up. But she also looks it over. You can see her with real appraising eyes, just looking at the back, picking at it a bit. She's looking for blood or soot or ash. She knows where this comes from. She just needs to check that it's clean. From one night to the morning the next day, her mother disappears. And we don't see her leave, but we see her in the night. And one of the great things about this film is it does describe two worlds. There is a dividing line in this world. It is not the wall between the house and the camp. It is not, I think, inside the characters, the part of them that acknowledges what they're doing and the part of them that's in denial about what they're doing. They are fully aware of what they are doing. You cannot live with those daily acts of will, those minute by minute acts of will, without knowing what it is you do. And then it becomes the air that you breathe. We choose to breathe. That's an act of will too, at the same time as doing it automatically. They are not divided in that way. These characters are divided between the daytime and the nighttime. There are two worlds portrayed in this film, when it's light and when it's dark. When it's light in this film, because it's partly set in summertime, it's warm, it's sunny, they go on picnics, they are outside a lot. It is very bright. And they live that life where the smells and the noise and the soot and the dirt and the blood and the shit and the screams are just who they are and how they live. They have swallowed it whole. It's inside them. It is like the air that they breathe. And then at night, in little ways, it comes out of them. At night, they experience it not as the air that they breathe, but as something that has a dreamlike quality. They can see the dreamlike way they live only at nighttime. This is true of the children. We see the children during the day, we just see them playing or doing their lessons or running around, teasing each other in the garden. But at night, one girl in particular wanders around the house and mutters to herself and seems like she's a little unhinged. Is she sleepwalking? Is she dreaming? Is she awake? Her father tries to console her. He consoles her with fairy stories. He himself looks a little different at night. It's at night that he brings a prostitute into the house to have sex with her in the basement. He is, at night, more like a man who is letting things out of himself that he keeps very neatly packaged inside himself during the day. But when it comes out of himself, he's not, unlike his mother-in-law, unhinged by it. It's like he's living a world in which he is able to be a little freer because he embraces the dreamlike quality of what's going on. It's unreal. It's unreal during the day. What's unreal about it is it's an unimaginable life. At night, these feel like lives that have acquired a sort of life of their own. It's surreal. And this is enhanced by the most dreamlike sequences in the film, very different from everything else, which is filmed pretty straight. There are a few sequences in the film that appear just now and then, and more towards the end than the beginning, which are filmed with a kind of night vision in black and white. And they portray a girl, a young woman, she looks about 15 or 16, on a bike, cycling around something which is clearly on the edges or on the fringes of the camp, with apples. And the apples, because of the way that it's filmed with this night vision, are very bright. And she places the apples in piles of ash or of soot, we don't know what they are, or of mud. And she is placing the apples there for the prisoners. And it looks like something from a fairy tale. It has exactly that quality. She is like a character from a Grimm Brothers tale, with her little sack, with the apples that glow in the dark, and she glows a little in the dark. And she's doing something that is clearly very innocent, could hardly be more innocent, though we also see her stealing the apples. But that's also a kind of innocent fairy tale crime. Apple theft, and then placing the apples because she knows the prisoners are hungry. It seems to be motivated by compassion. And as Jonathan Glazer said, after the making of the film, it's based on a true story. He actually met, still alive now, a woman who, when she was 15, 16, had lived near Auschwitz and had placed apples or food for the prisoners. So the bit that looks completely unreal and dreamlike is one of the bits that's based on reality. But it must be deliberately made to look like a fairy tale. And while we see it, we also hear Rudolf Höss at night reading a Grimm Brothers tale to the daughter who's been wandering, and she's not about to burst out and say, "Daddy, Daddy, what kind of a life is this that we are leading?" But she's struggling to contain it within herself. And it feels like that during the day, they can all swallow it down. They can all hold it inside. They can all breathe it. And something about the nighttime, about sleep and the prospect of sleep, about the way in which sleep opens people up to visions, lets something out of them. He reads to his daughter Hansel and Gretel, and so we hear, while we see the girl placing the apples, the story of Hansel and Gretel. And what do Hansel and Gretel do at the end of that story? They put the witch in the oven and they burn her, and they burn her alive. And we hear him reading that to his daughter to console her. The fairy tale story of the oven in which the human being was burned alive, and we hear the roaring of the furnaces in the background, and we see the girl placing the apples like she's in a fairy tale. There is this dream world version of what is happening at Auschwitz, which is a fairy tale because fairy tales are monstrous. They are horror stories. The Grimm brothers' stories, notoriously, when you go back to them, you discover they are describing the worst things imaginable. They're like torture porn. But he's reading it to console his daughter. And it is very chilling. It's unworldly. It's haunting. It's deeply unconsoling. And then the absence of any possibility of consolation from the dream world to the day world, the world of bright sunshine where people can see what's going on, where whatever it is that they have swallowed can't come out of them because they have to, by an act of will, choose to breathe this air. In that world, we see that whatever the dream fairy tale world suggested of the possibilities of innocence, or a line being drawn between innocence and guilt, or childhood and knowledge, all of that vanishes. And it vanishes just in one tiny scene that is overheard but not seen. We just hear the dialogue. One of the younger children in the house is playing in his bedroom during the day, and he hears a commotion outside that is clearly coming from the other side of the wall in the camp. And he hears an SS officer shouting at some people, "What is going on here?" And he is told these men are fighting over an apple. Clearly, these men have found the apple, one of the apples that the girl has left. And these people are starving, so whoever found it is now fighting with someone else who tries to claim it. And the SS officer says, "Drown him in the river." The result of leaving the apples for men who are starving to death is that one of them will be drowned in the river. It's impossible at this point to say anymore which is the nightmare world. The film ends with an extraordinary sequence, which happens away from Auschwitz, back in the office block where the death camp commanders meet to give their apologies, choose their employee of the month, and plot how to kill 1 million Hungarian Jews. Rudolf Höss gets the news that he wants to hear, the best news that he could hear, which is that he's been taken from Auschwitz, but the thought is the man who replaced him wasn't up to the job. He didn't have the stomach for it, whatever that means. And Höss is being sent back. He's been sent back to his family. He's being sent back to Hedwig and the children. And he's been asked to preside over this next phase of the final solution, the Hungarian deportation and extermination, because he's the man for the job. They've recognized him as having qualities that other of them lack. And he's thrilled. He's thrilled by the professional recognition. He's thrilled by the fact that he's going back to his family. And he's clearly thrilled by the fact that he's got good news for his wife. He's still a bit scarred by having to break her the bad news. Happy wife, happy life. He's looking forward to ringing her up, and he tells her, I've now heard I'm coming back. And she's delighted too, though she's a little distracted because it's nighttime. And these conversations are less easy for them to have at night. And we've seen him beforehand at a party that's taking place somewhere in and around these ministries, with women dressed up in the kind of fur coats and other things that Hedwig has got at Auschwitz, but never gets the chance to go to the parties. It's a formal party. There are men in uniform, many men in uniform. Rudolf Höss is a bit of an outsider, and we see him go upstairs and stand on a balcony and look down at the room, a bit like the scene, but without the fisheye lens, where we are shown the meeting room and we are shown these people sort of laid out and splayed out like in a dream. It has a dreamlike quality to it. And he says to Hedwig on the phone when he describes the party that it was a weird party, and he did go up to the balcony, but he couldn't really focus on the party itself because he found himself drifting into a sort of reverie. And the reverie was he saw a room full of people, and he wondered how he would gas them, because the crucial thing for gassing large numbers of people is that the ceilings need to be low to keep the gas down. And this is a grand kind of ballroom-style room with a very high ceiling. And so he wonders, in such a room, would it be possible to gas these people? And these people are his colleagues, his friends, his bosses. He doesn't say it with any anger. It's not suddenly coming out of him, I hate these people, I want them dead. He's not trying to divide himself from them. He's in a kind of trance. He's in a dreamlike state. And he's happy. This is the reverie of a man who is going back to Auschwitz to consider these very questions, how to gas people efficiently. And so it's his way of expressing that he's really comfortable, and he's comfortable with the news that he has to convey. In fact, both of them are kind of thrilled because, among other things, he's heard from Himmler that Himmler wants to name this whole operation after him. This is going to be named after Hus. And he says to her proudly, it's your name too. We're both being honored in this way. It's a very, very weird conversation. It's surreal. There's no other word for it. It's also strange. We're given very little historical contextual placing of what we see in this film. It's 43 and 44. But by the time we get towards the end of the film and the Hungarian deportations are underway and Hus has got to go back to Auschwitz to make sure they run smoothly, we are in early 1944. And everything that surrounds that meeting and his return to Auschwitz, the news that he's going back, the ministry buildings in which he meets, and the streets outside where we see miserable, desultory concerts with army bands playing to tiny frozen audiences of maimed men. And we hear little announcements on the tannoy that there will be a memorial service for all of the cadets who've been killed in the bombing of the military academy down the road, and there will be another rally to try and raise money for winter relief. They are losing this war. It's everywhere. It's unquestionable. D-Day hasn't happened yet, but we're well past Stalingrad. The tide has long since turned. And just as I don't think any of these people are in denial about what they are doing in the East, I don't think any of these people are really in denial about how the war is going. It's a kind of losing cause, and it doesn't touch them at all. It adds to the air of unreality, the nightmarish quality of everything that we see, that nothing about the maimed men and the mass funerals and the fact that people are running out of food. And everything is carrying on as though it were normal, and nothing is normal. And no one can believe that anything is normal. This is a country on the brink of destroying itself. But it's also on the brink of fulfilling its mission to exterminate the Jews. And he is just comfortable with it. At no point do we see him in these sequences looking uncomfortable, except at the very end. But before the very end, there is another scene that gives a hint of something else going on. Because we see him, Rudolf Hess, in a doctor's room, a kind of examination room, being examined. He's got his top off. Clearly something's wrong. It doesn't seem like it's a routine checkup because the doctor is asking questions, trying to get to the bottom of the mystery. It sounds like what he has are bad stomach pains. The doctor asks him about his bowel movements and, is he urinating frequently enough? And does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? And he taps and he presses. And Rudolf Hess says, my bowel movements are normal twice a day and it's fine, but something's off. He's not in there for no reason. Something is making him uncomfortable, but we don't know what it is. And he's not told by the doctor that he finds anything wrong. And then we see him back in his uniform, looking like the same man that we have seen throughout. Competent, relatively comfortable in his skin, except when he thinks his wife is angry with him, and delighted with the way things are going. He's being sent back to Auschwitz. He leaves the party, he finishes the phone call with his wife, and then he walks down the stairs at the back of whatever this building is. They are anonymous stairs of the kind you would get in any building, no matter how grand it is at the front, somewhere in the back. There are cold grey concrete stairs that people walk up and down. And he walks down the stairs and he pauses and he throws up, except he doesn't throw up. So what we see is a man who retches, violently retches, but nothing comes out. Unless I missed it, I didn't see anything come out. He's sort of retching air. He's in real pain. Something is trying to come out, but it can't come out. There is nowhere for it to go. What is the thing that's trying to come out? I mean, I don't know, but one way of thinking about it is that this man he's swallowed the world. He's living a life that is completely ordinary and also beyond comprehension in the realms of the surreal, the fantastical, the nightmarish, the dreamlike, in which everything that is ordinary is simultaneously always completely not just extraordinary, but impossible. It is impossible to raise children next door to a death camp. It is impossible to eat your food when you can smell what you can smell and hear what you can hear. It is impossible to be more frightened of your wife than of what you do every day. It is impossible to live like this. And yet he doesn't just live like this, he lives comfortably like this, which means there is something inside him which is all of it. He has swallowed all of it. He is not a divided person. He is not a person who has insulated himself from the horrors for which he is responsible. He is a monster. And he is a monster because there is a monster inside him, and that monster is him. And you can't throw it up or throw it out. And there is nothing for the doctor to find. The real Rudolf Höss, when he was finally, I think in 1947, tried and executed by the Polish government for his crimes at Auschwitz, wrote various things in his defense, although I don't think he much tried to defend himself, in which he said, I was taken over by an ideology that I should have questioned and challenged. I didn't challenge it. I just sort of swallowed it whole. And by swallowing it whole, I allowed it to take me over and to do these terrible things. And clearly, my mistake was not to challenge this whole mindset, this whole worldview. But in this film, he's not portrayed like a man who swallowed an ideology. There isn't much ideology. The closest we get is Hedwig saying to him, this is our Lebensraum. He's like a man who swallowed a fairy tale, like a Brothers Grimm fairy tale. He's swallowed inside himself, and he lives with it and through it in the daytime, in the daylight. The inversion of everything that is what it is to dream and then live a nightmare. He's swallowed something that goes way beyond ideology. There is no way for it to come out because that's who he has become. And so he can only experience the truth of what he is as a kind of dream or vision. He can't experience it directly, not because he is insulated from it, not because this is the banality of evil, but because he has swallowed it. It lives inside him. It is the air he breathes. So he can't see it outside of himself, except in fairy tales, in visions, in fugue-like or dream-like states. And the film ends with another of these, which it's hard to know how to describe it. This is an incredible film. It's not like anything else I've ever seen. And it's itself at moments quite surreal in the way that it uses color and light and sound, and not just the noise of the camp, but very, very strange noises, almost not quite music, noises to convey a sense of nightmarish unreality. But at the end of the film, we get some of that music, including the film fades out to black and just monstrous noises. But before that, we get the only bits in the film that are real in the sense that they are visual representations of what currently exists, which is Auschwitz Now. And Auschwitz Now is a memorial site and a museum commemorating and reminding the world of what happened there. And this set of exhibits includes, notoriously, harrowingly, huge rooms and huge chambers in these rooms full of the shoes and the crutches and the suitcases, all of the stuff that belonged to the people who were killed there that was gathered, and this is what was left at the end. Much of it had already long gone, because after all, millions were killed there. But we are looking at tens of thousands of pairs of shoes, including children's shoes and crutches, people who brought their crutches on the trains that took them there, had the crutches taken away from them, and then were gassed, the suitcases with their names on it. It's unbearable. And we are shown this, and we are shown this, as it is now, interspersed with seeing the man who did this trying and failing to throw up. And it's both the reality, this is not a dream, this stuff that we are seeing at Auschwitz is being filmed straight. It might be part of a documentary, but it's a dream for him. It's maybe a glimpse of the thing that he can't get outside of himself because there is no way out. There is no war, there is no division, there is no nothing. Everything is whole in him. And in these sequences, we also get a different soundscape. So finally, we get away from the terrible noises that have been following us, the viewers and the listeners. This is a film that has to be listened to as much as watched. Throughout the film, we get a different set of noises. In this glimpse of the thing that is both the most dreamlike of all, because it's his vision, perhaps, and is also the only thing in the film that one could say is real in the sense of being filmed as a form of capturing the thing as it is now. But what we are shown is not people coming to look at these exhibits. We are not shown the camp serving its purpose as a place where school children are now taken to remind them so that they shall never forget. We are shown those bits of the camp as it is now being cleaned. So there are women, and they are all women, who come in wearing cleaners' outfits, and they polish and they rub on the glass to make sure that the glass is clear, and they vacuum, they hoover. So we see them vacuuming the floors and scrubbing and polishing the floors. And that's the noise that we hear, the noise of cloth on glass and brush on floor and the hum of a vacuum cleaner, which is not a million miles away from the roar of the furnace, but it's the opposite of the roar of the furnace. So the film ends with the banality of cleaning. That is the end of our film series. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I've loved making them. And thank you to everyone who has sent in their comments, ideas, corrections, a few of those, and the many, many, many suggestions we've had for other films that we could talk about. I am sure we will do another series because there are so many that I would love to watch. But also a reminder that there are 5 bonus episodes to accompany this series. And to get them, you simply need to subscribe to PPF Plus. To do that, click on the link in the show description or go to ppfideas.com. It costs £5 a month or £50 for the year. You get all of our bonus episodes, 2 every month, 24 in the year, plus ad-free listening, plus automatic sign-up to our newsletter. The 5 film bonus episodes that we have for this series, all of them available to you to listen now, are one on High Noon, American president's favourite film, it seems, though not Donald Trump. A conversation with Helen Thompson about Apocalypse Now. Most recently, my description of my favourite film and why I love it so, In the Loop, the funniest of all films about politics, but also 2 episodes about Claude Lanzmann's documentary on the Holocaust, Shoah. And given what I've been talking about today, those are the episodes, I think, that go with today's episode. We put them out shortly before Christmas, and we didn't want to make a fuss about them because it's not a very Christmassy subject. But they are important episodes in this series. They are 2 very important episodes for me. Shoah is there, parts 1 and part 2, along with everything else. Just sign up to PPF Plus. Do also follow us on Blue Sky if you want to find out more about this podcast. We have taken ourselves off Twitter for reasons that you can work out for yourselves. So we are now on Blue Sky at PPF Ideas, and we are about to start a major new series. It's going to be big. It's quite ambitious. It's an attempt to tell the history of revolutionary ideas, from religion and science and art to politics, including the ideas behind the big political revolutions, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian and Chinese revolutions. But we'll also be talking about Darwin and Einstein, about surrealism and Bauhaus. And we're going to be starting with conversations about revolutionary ideas in the ancient world with the philosopher Agnes Callard on how Socrates changed everything, and with the historian and podcaster Tom Holland on how Christianity upended our world. Before that, a first episode with conversations about what makes a revolutionary idea. I do hope you'll join us for all of that. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up for 2025. This has been Past, Present, Future, brought to you in partnership with the London Review of Books. Past, Present, Future is part of the Airwave podcast network.